Revelation per day. And so that would take us approximately 21 weeks to get through it. But Revelation has a lot more meat in it than I thought. So I'm not going to rush through it. Oh, got another person here. Yeah, rather than, because last time it was like 2 hours and I'm going, it's too long. There's a lot of information there and it's really good. And I wanted to get it all done at once so that you see it as one thought and you can see how it flows together. But I'm not going to hold you here for 3 hours. You'll be here at midnight. Okay, so not going to do that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to break it down. Even if we have to go slow, we're not in a hurry. Okay, so I'm going to even cover the tangents and everything because there are a lot of very valuable tangents. Revelation is it's the only book of the Bible that presumes that you've read the rest of the Bible, and it quotes from the other Bible passages without telling you what it's doing. And so it assumes you've already had this background, and very few people have that much of a background to know, oh, I know where that's from. So we're going to go through and go through those tangents so that everybody is up to speed. That's important because Revelation is impossible to understand if you don't have that background. So that's why we're going to take some time and go through those tangents. When you cover the tangents, Revelation's not that difficult. I'm surprised to say it. I thought that there was no way to make it easy, but that's the only way to make it easy, is to cover the tangents. You know, when it refers to other passages or other truths, we really have to go back and take an in-depth look at those truths, and then it all flows. So we're going to be doing that. So today, instead of going through the entire Revelation chapter 3, we're just going to cover Sardis. You know, there's 3 churches that are covered in Revelation chapter 3. All right, so now, so far, we've covered the letter to Pergamos, Smyrna, Ephesus, and Thyatira. And so we have 3 churches left, and they're all covered in Revelation chapter 3. And there is a lot of meat going on here, and so I don't want to speed through it, so we're just going to cover Sardis today. In fact, we might not make it all the way through Sardis, I don't know.
To the angel of the church in Sardis write, these things says he who has the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars.
So, now this right here, in case you're wondering, what is he talking about, the 7 spirits of God? We covered this in Revelation chapter 1. Okay, so this is not new. He's simply repeating something that we've already come across. And what we discussed in Revelation 1, now we don't know for sure what this is about. So I'm not going to say with certainty that I know what the 7 spirits of God are. The best thing I've seen, the best explanation, is that they're referring to something from Isaiah 11:2, where it says the Spirit of the Lord, so that's 1, will rest on him. The Spirit of wisdom, 2, and understanding, 3, the Spirit of counsel, 4, and strength, 5, the Spirit of knowledge, 6, and fear of the Lord, 7. So that's the only thing that seems to make some kind of sense. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because how does that affect your life today? It really doesn't. I mean, it's you know, we knew this stuff about God already, and so it's a nice descriptor. We're not sure what it means. Move on.
I know your works, that you have a name, that you are alive, that you are dead. Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain, that are ready to die. For I have not found your works perfect before God.
Okay. So, scary letter. You know, he's saying some very important things today. He says, you know, I know your works. You have a name, that you are alive, but you are dead. Okay, that's not something you want God to say to you. You got a great reputation, awesome, but it's not true. You're just hanging on. You got a reputation for being solid Christian, being filled with the Holy Spirit and all that stuff, but I don't think so. I don't think so. You're pretty soon. You know, there's not much life left in you. So kind of a scary thing. You know, they're not in a relationship with God very much. There might be a few of them that are, but overall, they're not doing well. And he's letting them know, you're hanging on. You're hanging on by a thread. So you need to get that under. You need to take action. All right. It reminds me, you know, that whole deadness. Europe used to be, especially, you know, England and Germany and so forth. You know, Germany first with Luther started a huge Reformation, and then England. You know, if you go to the 19th century, England was like the capital of the Christian world. all of your great missionaries and your great pastors came out of there. And so, I mean, England was awesome in terms of spreading Christianity throughout the world. And now you go to England, you find all these churches. You go inside. Last time I was there, I forgot how many years ago it was, but you know, when we visited the churches, you know what? Not one of those churches actually had Christians going to them. They were used for AA meetings, and there were museums. None of them were active. And so you have to, if you go to London, good luck finding a church. It's not that easy to find. Good luck finding churches where people are meeting. You know, and that's kind of what happens when churches, when people get cold, when Christians stop behaving like Christians, after a while, there's nobody left and they're dead. Okay. And that's kind of the idea, as he's saying, you're on your way to being like England.
Remember, therefore, how you have received and heard. Hold fast and repent. Therefore, if you will not watch, I will come upon you as a thief, and you will not know what hour I will come upon you.
All right. So he's threatening them. It's like, look, if you don't get this taken care of, if you don't start taking me seriously, I'm going to show up unexpected, and it won't be a happy surprise, because when you tell somebody I'm going to come like a thief, that's not very happy. You don't want to wake up, oh, surprise, there's a thief downstairs. Nope, that's a bad thing. And so, yeah, that's going to be an unhappy surprise. Okay. And he's telling them, I'm warning you, you're in for an unhappy surprise. And that kind of suggests something. It suggests that you're counting on your fire insurance. Well, I know Jesus died for my sins and I'm going to heaven for sure. And this doesn't inspire confidence that they're going to make it. Okay. So this is a scary letter. All right, and he tells them, you know, think back. You guys were on the right track. Remember how things started out. Remember, you know, you need to repent. And, you know, very often, you know, one of the reasons that Christians get cold is because they forget that they have been forgiven for a lot of sins. It's very, you know, what happens, you become a Christian. When you first become a Christian, you're so happy. Wow. All my sins are forgiven, and all that baggage, all that stuff that I thought I was going to have to do a lot of good stuff to make up for it and everything. I don't have to do anything. Jesus paid for everything. And I'm really grateful to Jesus for dying for my sins. And then you enter the Christian life. Now what happens? As a Christian, you know, you read the Bible a few times, you go to church, and you learn about all the big sins and all the things you shouldn't do. And 90% of that stuff you're not going to be doing. The big stuff, I mean, you know, the drinking and drugging and sleeping around and stuff, you got that covered, most people, you know? And so what's left are these smaller things like the gossip and occasionally maybe not telling the truth, you know, hatred, envy, those things. But those are things that people do, they keep to themselves. It's not very public. And compared to the sins of non-Christians, compared to the people on the news, you're not that bad, okay? And that's the other thing is that compared to now that you're a Christian in the Christian world, relatively speaking, your sins aren't that big. And after a while, the less you are forgiven for, the more comfortable you're feeling, the less guilty you're feeling, and the value of Jesus' death on the cross becomes less and less and less, because you stop appreciating the magnitude of what Jesus died for, because your sins just don't seem that bad if you're looking at the world and comparing yourself to the people on television and to the sinners in your life. You're doing pretty well. Now, the question to Jesus is, what are you doing for me lately? Okay, because yeah, dying for my sins, but you know what? I'm not that bad now. And so that's not as big a present as it used to be. So I expect more from my, you know, I'm going to church, I'm giving money and doing stuff like that. I expect a little something, okay? And if you don't get what you expect, your love for God starts to dry up. And so this is one of the factors that takes place when people start getting cold.
Bill?
Yeah.
One thing I noticed is there's pretty much nothing good here, because he always starts out with whatever is good. Mm-hmm. And even in this, he says, I know your deeds. And he just doesn't say whether they're one way or the other.
Yeah.
And then as a comparison to the church of Ephesus, in Ephesus, he says, remember what you did at first.
Right.
Start doing that. You got to wake up. But here he says, remember what you have received and heard.
Mm-hmm.
Then he says, obey it. Like they really never did. This other reputation about being alive sounds to me, because he says you're not, it must be a reputation in the community or such.
Good point. Very good.
Having good, rock, singing and all, but there's any of the content is really not there.
You're right. Yeah. I mean, the best thing he could say was, you had a great reputation. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's all they've got. So Sardis is in bad shape.
Yeah.
Sardis and Laodicea are really in trouble. Okay. So maybe it's because they're on the east side, like New York, so one of those.
There you go.
All right, now I'm just going to read really quick. This is the Wuest version for that whole chapter, and I'm going to read through it quickly. And there's a couple of pearls in here. And to the messenger of the assembly in Sardis, write at once. These things says he who has the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars. I know with absolute clearness your work. So that's something that comes out in the expanded version. I know absolutely what's up with you. That you have a reputation that you are alive, and yet you are dead. And be becoming watchful and alert, and stabilize at once the remaining things which are about to die. So you're literally telling them you're hanging by a thread. Now, first he said you're dead, and now he kind of backtracks, says, well, actually, you're not completely dead. There's this much left. Okay, you got this. All right, yeah. For I have found no works of yours that have been brought to a state of completeness in the sight of God. So yeah, you're on your way, but you haven't made it. I mean, no, you're not done. You're on your way, but you didn't arrive. Be remembering, therefore, in what way you have received the truth as a permanent deposit, and in what way you heard it, and be safeguarding it, and have a change of mind at once. If then you do not watch, I will come like a thief, and you will by no means know what kind of an hour I will come upon you. But you have a few names in Sardis who did not defile their garments. So most of you are hanging by a thread. There are a few people that didn't defile their garments, okay? And we'll talk about that a little bit later, what it means to defile your garments. Think about defiling a diaper, same thing. And they shall walk in fellowship with me in white garments, because they are worthy. He who gains the victory shall in that manner be arrayed in white garments, and I will positively not erase his name from the scroll of life. So this is interesting, this statement here, that suggests that, kind of like when you're young and innocent, your name gets written. Congratulations, here's your name. You're going to live and go to heaven. But then after a while, you start doing a few sins and it gets taken out. Then become a Christian. Oh, let's put it back in there. Okay. But the thing is the idea is if you're solid, if you're a real Christian, if you've really accepted Christ, your name, it stays in that book. If not, it doesn't. And I will openly confess his name before my Father and before his angels. He who has ears, let him hear at once what the Spirit is saying to the assemblies. So we're gonna go into this in a little more detail here. Now, in terms of losing it, because this is the topic that we're going to be discussing for the rest of the time here. How do you get your name taken out? How do you lose? I mean, because you go through John chapter 14, 15, and 16. Just go through the Gospels. And if you're saved, if you're a child of God, you can't lose it. It makes it very clear that, once you're in, the Lord hangs on to you, and you're not gonna fall out. And so then you got this language that is downright scary. It's like, you know what? Hanging by a thread. You keep that up, you're gone. You're out of here. So, I mean, that just kind of makes you a little nervous there. How can you like, oops, and there you go. You thought you were saved. Surprise! All right, that's not something you want, And so, what is going on here? Now, this is a topic in itself, and we've kind of talked about this. But I'm going to cover some of these same points because it's important to really keep this in mind. You don't oops and lose your salvation. I don't think you can. However, you can walk away. That can be done. The Bible makes it clear that we are to take our faith as though we've enrolled in a college class. Pay attention. You have assignments. Please do them. try, okay? Don't ignore going to class. Don't ignore the reading material. If you do, you're not going to pass. So Jesus said, you know, my burden is easy, it's light, you know, take my yoke upon you. It is doable. I will help you, but you got to come to class. There is something that we have to do. Now, this is just a list of, and actually I pulled this up and I modified it a little bit. But I kind of agree with these 7 biggest reasons that people leave God. 1, they fail to study scripture for themselves, and they manifest stronger identification with the world's values and desires than God. Okay, that's what happens if you ignore what God says, if you don't identify with his values, and that has to do with scripture. It really does. They fail to practice thankfulness, and they don't recognize and appreciate what he's given them already. This is so important. And I treat, thousands of people, hundreds at a time. And, for the Christians that are in miserable states, where they're constantly anxious and depressed, one of the things they have in common that I have to keep reminding people of very often is you really have to make a practice of being thankful for what you do have. That is a choice. All right. Now, when we're very alert to when things go wrong in our life, when we have a lack, when God isn't giving us what we want, or we're in a situation where we have what we don't want, and all we can think about is that thing that's bothering us. We don't draw our attention to what we do have and what's going right. And that thankfulness is not just because God likes to hear how wonderful he is. That thankfulness is for us too. It's one of the positive emotions that we can pull up at any time, and it literally is good for you. It's like you taking a vitamin. When you practice thankfulness, it actually reduces the stress hormones in your blood. It actually has a medicinal effect. So we are designed for this. And failure to practice thankfulness literally contributes to the disease processes in our body. Okay? I'll talk about a little bit more of this later. They're disconnected from God's creation. They fail to appreciate the beauty and technical complexity of nature. Therefore, they lack an appreciation of God's engineering skills. One of the keys of being a happy Christian is, when you go out into nature, look around, wow, he surrounded us with a lot of beauty. Even if you look at animals and plants and the sky and everything, we're surrounded with that, and we need to take a time to appreciate that. We don't invest time in relationships with healthy believers. Some people, all their friends are out there in the world. They don't really have any solid Christian friends. That's, God designed us to have fellowship with each other as a way of strengthening us. It's important. We aren't pursuing and living out our unique purpose or calling. It's not a priority. Now, this is a big one right here. Everybody, all Christians, every person that comes to God, he has in mind a specific purpose for you. That's why you are unique. Everybody is unique, and there's something, with the help of the Holy Spirit, with God's help, there is something that you can do. There are people that only you can reach. There's a message that you are in a special position to communicate more than everybody else. It's yours. It's specifically for you. And only when you're following God consistently, eventually, as you mature, you will find out what that is. Okay? And that is something that if your Christianity is just fire insurance, these people are not interested in God's purpose for them. They're so focused on what they want that it's not an issue. And the thing is that once you find that, once you discover your particular gift, it adds a joy to life that you can't compare with. It's amazing. It's like, this is what you're good at, and it's natural, it's easy, and it's actually fun. But that's something you only find by following God. Okay? They spend more time doing things for God than being alone with God. Going to fellowship things or church and doing ministry things about, like, putting chairs together or cleaning up things and stuff like that. Doing busy stuff for God, but not spending time actually with God. Okay? They fail to recognize the synchronicity miracles that God performs in their life. Very often, God does, synchronicity miracles. Those are the most common miracles that Christians experience. I had one last week where what happened was, I have 2 cars. I got my Leaf, it's an electric car, and then I got my Murano, which is 17 years old. Happy birthday. Okay. And then My Leaf is 7 years old. And what happened was I went out to go somewhere and my Leaf wouldn't start. I mean, the electronics came on and said, take it to the shop, something, so it needs to go to the service center. So I'm like, what? I had no problems with the car. And suddenly I'm getting these crazy things and it won't start. And I'm going, okay, it's an electric car. How am I supposed to get it out of my garage? It's in park and there's no juice, man. So how do I get it out of there? I have no idea. So I called the service center to set up an appointment, but I can't do that. And so I said, okay, I'm going to drive the Murano in and I'm going to ask them to tell me how to get that thing out of the garage. So I take the Murano in and they tell me, oh, the Leaf guy is sick today, so nobody can help you. This is just bad. What's going on here? And then I say, well, since I'm here, my Murano, there's something leaking underneath there. It's not oil, and I just want to make sure it's not radiator fluid and stuff. So could you look under it, just tighten it up and see what the problem is? So that's what I do. And so they call me later and says, oh, guess what? What? Well, when they put in your new transmission, they forgot to replace the seals, and that's transmission fluid. And so we're going to have to completely fix that and do this and that and everything. So it's going to be over $1,000. And I'm like, oh man, this is just great. Got 2 cars and both of them are dead. Wonderful, wonderful. So anyway,
wasn't it their fault?
No, because they're not the ones that did the work. They didn't put the transmission. Okay.
So then the other people should pay for it.
Yeah, you'd think, but
I'm sorry. I'm just
yeah.
I was trying to.
Yeah. But the bottom line was, though, it turns out that I figured out it was just the Leaf had sat for a long time, and I have this battery, and it's a gel battery, and so if they sit, they die, and you have to charge them with the slow charger. When I did that, it was fine. It didn't cost anything to fix. Okay, so the point is that if the Leaf hadn't died, then I wouldn't have taken the Murano in. If I didn't take the Murano in, the transmission would have failed entirely because of loss of fluid. So the death of the Leaf battery saved the Murano. Synchronicity. See, that's a synchronicity. That's where you go, God, thank you, because that would have destroyed the car. And I'm not fixing it again because I've thrown too much, it's 17 years old, right? I mean, come on, And so, but I'm saying that was like, wow, God, if you hadn't done that, because I was letting it go. I wasn't going to do anything. So that's a synchronicity. And when you see that kind of stuff in your life, you go, God is, he's there. We have this interaction. It's part of the relationship. And it keeps the Christian relationship exciting and alive. And these are things that are important in order to maintain our Christian walk. Okay? Now, expectations. Boy, is that a big factor. When people walk away from God, it's almost always because of expectations that were inappropriate. And then they're disappointed and angry at God because he failed to live up to our expectations. Many people, when they become Christians and they start to appreciate, wow, God can do anything. Therefore, whoa, think about what that means for me. I can get anything. And one of the things that they want from God that they think is reasonable is they expect the Almighty God to change the world to make life better for them because he has the power. So yeah, Lord, change my boss, change my spouse, change my kids. That's what I want. And so that's where they're directing their energy because they're fine. I'm okay. I don't need changing, but everybody else does. So go to it, God. Make them change so life will be better for me. Well, that's not how it works. God wants to change us. And that's something that you have to realize, that when you enter a relationship, his interest is in changing us, not other people. Okay? And people don't like that. That's not what they expected. All right, now we're going to talk about a word that is very, very important. The key to having a successful Christian life that's not plagued with depression and anxiety is acceptance. Now, there are so many different definitions of acceptance, and many of them are good, okay? But I'm not talking about many of them. One of the popular ones today is acceptance in terms of cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness, okay? And an important component of mindfulness is acceptance of your inner experience. So instead of trying to avoid negative emotions, you accept them. You're angry, you're sad, you're frustrated. Don't run from it. Don't pretend it's not there. Accept it, and don't judge yourself for accepting those. And there's a place for that. There is a place for acceptance. That's not what I'm talking about. Not at all. That's a different acceptance, okay? Harold Kushner wrote a very popular book. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. It was When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Now, you're probably all familiar with that book. Well, Rabbi Harry Kushner was the one that wrote it, and what caused him to write it was the birth of his son Aaron. Aaron was diagnosed with progeria, okay? Now, if you know anything about progeria is one of the worst genetic diseases you can get. Progeria, you don't want that. You don't want your kid to be diagnosed with progeria. The average lifespan is 13, okay? It's as though you are born at age 70 years old, literally. I mean, you that's how it is. You start out, you will never grow beyond toddler sized, okay? And you get all the diseases of old age. As a teenager, you're looking at Alzheimer's, okay? So, and your appearance is something that causes everybody to look at you and know, hey, you're weird. What's wrong with you? You look scary, okay? So when you take a look at all the physical problems and the fact that you will never fit in like everybody else, you don't want that for your kid. It's a very terrible thing. Now, with this horrible diagnosis and all the problems, what Kushner says is he's like, when bad things happen to good people, he wrote it with good intentions. His idea was, I don't want people blaming God when bad things happen to good people. It's not God's fault. And so what he basically said, he says, Aaron had nothing good to gain from being sick with progeria. Okay, it's offensive. He said it's offensive to suppose that misfortunes come from God. No, no, no. God was not punishing or blessing him with this illness. Illnesses are only the painful consequences of being human. Nothing more, nothing less. God had nothing to do with Aaron's progeria. Nothing at all. It just happened. God wound up the world. He created the universe, wound it up, and stepped back and let things play out. He was not aware of what would happen. He didn't know anything about the specifics. Good and bad happen. It's just consequences. And basically, it's luck. It's good luck or bad luck. It's just luck. So don't blame God. That is what Kushner's response was, okay? Now, the thing is, the problem I have with that is that he's saying, okay, I accept Aaron's disease as an accident of nature. God was oblivious to this. He just wound the clock up and walked away. It's not his fault that some people got lucky and some people are unlucky. And his attitude was, I don't curse God for Aaron's disease, but I don't thank God either, because there's nothing to do with God. Now, while on the face of it, you think, well, good, he's not blaming God, and we don't want people blaming God for bad things. That isn't biblical. I'm sorry. That is not consistent with the biblical version of reality. That is consistent with George Carlin's version of God. At best, God can be viewed as nothing more than an uncaring, incompetent father figure. He just wound it up and walked away, knowing that some people are going to get really messed over and other people are going to go woohoo, and he just let that happen and not even watching. Then it suggests that your theology is similar to George Carlin's. Okay, that's not the kind of acceptance that's healthy. It's not. And you can accept things like that and still be miserable. That is not therapeutic acceptance. It's not, okay? I've had over the years, I treat some people that are severely ill. Many of them have psychiatric conditions that are very terrible, and they will never be able to live independently. They will be dependent on their parents their entire lives. And that's rough. That's rough. When you have a parent or a child, a sibling, and that cannot care for themselves, sometimes you're it. And you, for the rest of your life, you are caring for this disabled individual. And I have people right now that I have one situation where I have a woman that's caring for her Down syndrome daughter who's in her 20s and her Alzheimer's husband, okay? That's a lot on your plate. And sometimes when people are in this situation where they are a forced caregiver, emotionally, it hits them very hard. And the reaction is anxiety and anger. Now, they accept it. They accept the situation. They accept that they have to care for a disabled child and a useless husband, okay? My life is crap, give me some medication, okay? Yeah, I'm in a situation, I don't like it. I don't blame myself, I blame them. I blame my luck, I blame them, I blame God, okay? So yeah, I'm fine, I accept it. I accept that I'm not responsible, that I don't blame myself. I blame God for giving me a crap life, okay? And in this anger, in this blaming, they are constantly, if you take a look at their blood, at the labs, their cortisol levels and their cytokine levels are, I mean, if you take a look at their cytokine levels are going to be elevated all the time. What that means is that they are aging at an accelerated rate. In the original telomeric studies, many years ago, we learned that when you are, see look at the chromosomes on the screen. See the big chromosome? No, see the black stuff on the tips of the chromosomes? That's your telomeric DNA, or your telomeres. Now, the younger you are, the longer your telomeres. As you age, the telomeres shorten, okay? Every time the cells divide, they get a little shorter. And as you age, they get shorter and shorter and shorter. And what happens when they go all the way down? The cell stops dividing, okay? And when the cell stops dividing, you have less than a year to live. So that's kind of your fuse that determines your lifespan. Okay, the shorter those telomeres, the less healthy you become, and eventually you die. And what they discovered in those original studies, I will never forget this. One of the groups that they wanted to know the effects of stress on telomere length. And what they discovered was that the more stress you're under, the faster you aged. And one of the groups they looked at were specifically women who were taking care of disabled children. And what they discovered was that the women who accepted it with joy, okay, who didn't blame the child, didn't blame God, that they went about, they felt that was a normal thing. They didn't compare themselves with people who don't have handicaps, okay? They just went on and they maintained a normal, healthy attitude. Their telomere lengths were just like everybody else. But for the women that just did not accept the situation they were in, that maintained an attitude of anxiety and anger, basically it took away 17 years from their life in terms of telomere length. That's what the stress did for them, okay? So not accepting actually kills you. Now, I'm going to talk about this concept of acceptance. I'm going to go into this in really big detail here. And we have a video coming up that's almost 20 minutes long, but it's really, really good. And hopefully you get something out of it. But the first case I want to talk, I get this psychiatric news. It's a paper for psychiatrists. And there was an article written by Dr. Ethan Weiss. And Ethan had a daughter many years ago. She still does. She's still alive. And her name was Ruthie. And what they discovered was that Ruthie couldn't see very well. And they took her to a specialist and found out she has albinism. She's an albino. Both he and his wife had a recessive gene that coded for becoming an albino. And unfortunately, Ruthie got one bad copy from him and one bad copy from his wife. And so together, that means that she's an albino. Now, unfortunately, the retina, if you're a true albino, your retina does not form properly and it makes your vision very bad. I have a patient with it and she is legally blind. She's legally blind because of that. Ruthie's vision was 2200. What that means is what normal people can see at 200 feet, she has to be 20, the other way, no. What normal people see at 20 feet, it's like it's 200 feet away for her, okay? So yeah, that's really bad. Things are very blurry and glasses don't necessarily fix that, okay? So so basically, she's legally blind. And when they first got the diagnosis, they were devastated. I mean, he was, he was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is going to be horrible. And their concerns were based on both the physical, because she couldn't play sports with friends. She looks different. She's an albino, so obviously she's looking different. She may not have friends. They feared that she might not feel like she belongs. They were worried about people are going to tease her. And so it really affected them a lot. However, they eventually came to accept it. It says, that she's special. And he says here, ultimately, we realized how lucky she was and really how lucky we were. all parents think their kids are special, but we knew this one was particularly special. Sure, she'd run into windows and she had enough bruises and bumps to warrant a call to Child Protective Services. It was annoying to her and to us to remember her hat and sunglasses, because without hat and sunglasses, she's at risk for skin cancer, okay? And sunscreen application was always a challenge, but these were exceptions. Overall, life with Ruthie was joy. It was pure joy. And so what they basically did was they accepted, well, what's good about it? You know, Ruthie was a very positive, happy child, and it was a joy raising her. So yeah, there were some downsides, but overall, they looked at all the positive things about Ruthie's life and they focused on those. And that was how they came to a acceptance and did not experience clinical depression over this disease for their daughter. Okay, so that's one case. Now, while albinism is kind of a scary thing and you don't want your child to be an albino, there are much, much worse things. I mentioned that book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, because the author's son had progeria. Progeria, in my opinion, is one of the worst genetic diseases you can get. When you take a look at all of the effects, not just that your kid's only going to live to 13, it's everything. It's everything. You have a child that's going to experience way more pain than normal kids. They are going to look so different than people will point and stare. Some will laugh and ridicule. They're not going to get above 3.5 feet tall. They're going to have giant heads. They're going to have severe arthritis and heart disease and senility in their teens. Okay, so this is wow. So the question is, how do you accept something like that? And see, this is what Kitchener was dealing with. That's what his kid had. Okay, now progeria is due to a mutation in a gene called laminin A. And what happens is that if you have that particular mutation, then normally laminin, when it is created, it is guided to the inner nuclear envelope by a molecule called farnesyl. And people with this mutation for progeria, they lack the ability to take off the farnesyl. And so what that does is that ultimately, just in layman's term, it screws up your nucleus. The nucleus of the cell is where your DNA is. And so as a result, you can't repair your DNA, okay? You end up with all kinds of problems. The telomeres, it really messes up your telomeres. So they're born with short telomeres and they age at a faster rate. So what are the symptoms of progeria? Macrocephaly. You end up with a giant head, all right? Alopecia, no hair. They lose their hair as toddlers. No hair on your head, no eyebrows, no eyelashes. Swollen veins, the absence of eyebrows and lashes, a beak-shaped nose. Your teeth are always horrible. Every kid that with progeria, their teeth are all jankety. I mean, they're really messed up. Small jaw, shrunken chin, cardiac problems, narrow chest, swollen joints, really bad arthritis, like an old person, age spots, very dry, scaly, thin skin. Imagine a 90-year-old in a nursing home. That's your kid, okay? And growth retardation. So, and then all of the diseases of old age, including Alzheimer's. So very scary, terrible malady, all right? So is it possible? I mean, if you can accept that, then there's very little you can't accept. How do you experience joy when you have been dealt a hand that's this bad? And see, this is what Kitchener had to deal with. He had a son and his kid died, you know, at around 13. That's when they normally die. And so that's so tragic. You get a short life. You don't get any of the normal things. Your appearance is such that people think you're ugly and weird. Wow. You know, so is it possible to accept circumstances this tragic without being depressed? I personally, there was a young woman born in South Africa who had progeria. She was the first Black person in history to get progeria. And when I say get it, I mean, it's unlike albinism, where each parent contributes a recessive allele, and so actually it's the parents that give the child the disease. Progeria isn't like that. Progeria is not inherited. Progeria is due to a spontaneous mutation. So when you were just an egg, a random mutation occurs, and there you go. It's very rare. Okay, it's very rare, but it's just one of those things where it just, boop, there you go. All right. So how do you deal with something of this magnitude? The video that I put together here is about a young woman whose name is very difficult to pronounce. It's Antametsi. Okay, Antametsi. Wow, that's a hard one, okay? But the attitude, she lived all the way to 18, which is very rare. I mean, that's very special that she lived that long. But I will tell you, I have never in my life met or heard of anybody like this. And you'll kind of understand why as we go through the video. So, question before us is, what if we accepted our assets and our liabilities and handicaps as gifts from God? Now, some people look at that and say, they roll their eyes and go, your handicaps, your pain, your disappointment, no way, you can't be thankful for that, especially if it's on this level. It's impossible. Well,
Yep.
we are supposed to, okay? Biblically, that is the position. The Bible says, Romans 8:28, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who called according to his purpose, which means he's not only aware of all the bad things that are going to happen to him, he signs off on it, and he intends it for good. And 1 Peter 1:6-7 says, in this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you've been grieved by various trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. So saying here that there's a point to it. Not only did God give it to you, there was a point. Now, if you don't participate and comply with God, then just because he had a point doesn't mean you're going to experience it. So yes, there's two kinds of pain, meaningless and meaningful. If you go through the pain being bitter and angry and ignoring God, then guess what? Your pain was meaningless, but you made it meaningless. If we do it the way he told us, then it's meaningful and God makes something out of it. And Antametsi demonstrated this. This little kid, I'll tell you, when I was a Christian, when I was a teenager, on a scale of 1 to 10, I was a 0.5 compared to her. She's a 10.
Meet Ntlametse Palati living with progeria. Her life journey has not been an easy one. She takes us back to memory lane and tells us about her life growing up.
Well, I grew up in Hebron, and I grew up with my mom, my grandma, my big brother, and we had cousins. My other cousins lived with us. And I went to primary school in Laredo in Hebron until grade 7. From there, I went to Dominican Convent School in Johannesburg.
Growing up, life was not pleasant. She did not know what her disease was.
Me growing up, I was kind of a crash. I was kind of a shy child. But as time went by, I started to develop, more interest. Since all, I was even different from other children, and it was a difficult thing, because I never even knew what was progeria by then. I always assumed and believed in whatever rumors that were there out there, other children were saying. And which was a difficult thing, not for only me, but also for my family. But I guess I was really a strong child growing up. I mean, I always believed in myself, and I knew that whatever reason I'm different from others, there should be a good reason why God made it like that.
She knew little about her condition, and that made her want to explore more about it.
Well, after people realized what disease I had, it was kind of a little bit better, and that's why I started knowing life and enjoying life, and that's where I started to realize what kind of life is it, being normal in a way.
Ntlametse is one of the 2 known South African people to be diagnosed with progeria. Bleak and hopeless was what was predicted of her life. Today we celebrate her life and the strength she possesses every day of living with the condition.
The term progeria, I know, is that it's a rare disease that children with progeria, they function faster, so they develop more diseases quicker, and their body inside age faster.
Ntlametse's mother, Bella Palati, got a breakthrough of a daughter's life through her friend.
It was difficult too much because of Ntlametse. I'm healthy until another 3 months I change. Then I started very tiny, then miriri itluha, then manalahai I change. So se le hwana difficult monna hore ke maketse re ho etsahalang. I thought maybe ke cancer, ona le cancer. Then nka starta ka tsamaya sepetlele ka se kry thuso. Then till ke kreya one of my friends, a neighbor, ale abroad. Then monna hae ele doctor ko UK. Then ampotsa hore no, o ntlametse hana cancer na. There is a disease called progeria.
Her mother, after understanding about the condition and taking her for relevant help, started counting each day as a blessing.
Then re tsamaye re ye George Mukari. Ha re fihla ko George Mukari, re batle a genetic doctor. Then re thole a staying. So ko hospital na bana hore maybe ra hafanyana. Then I insist hore no, this is progeria until I get Dr. Hani ba check mo website in Dr. Hani bona ya ke progeria. Then re starte hona mo re itse hore ke progeria a tsamaye le rona a Wonder Park a mpontsha mo website ngwana le hore ba byang ke bana ba bannang ko America ke bolwetse bo byang progeria.
Her mother embraced the disease, knowing that they as a family had to live with it, making it part of their life journey.
Progeria ka re ke tšhomi ya ka hona beno. Kore ke itse in and out hona beno ha ke sa tlhele ke tshoga hore kore ke itse hore ha ho etsahala so if a ka re ke tshwere ke tlhogo mama, yes I know hore ke di symptoms ho tla so ho irahala so ho etsahalang because wa gola ke re dingwaga di a tsamaya le body ya hae e thomo change sefatlhego sa change. So ke a itse hore ke dilo tse ntseng ke di itse ke na le ha ke ile ko America ba ntlhalosetsa ba nruta ka bolwetse bo ka ba bona ke nna le bo mme ba ba tshwereng ba bana ba progeria so ra bolela so ke se ke itse a ke sa tlhele e le ntho e leng hore ya ntshosa like at first na re ntshosa o ntlametse a mpotsa hore ka leso la ka ho etsahalang ka 13 years ne ke tsuntsa tlhokofale mara ka re God is good, God is great le ho rapela modimo wa khona bona 17 so ke leboha modimo ka se tlheletsang ke tse ditseng tsona ene ke nahana hore.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ontamete Palate. I'm 13 years old. I'm diagnosed with a disease called progeria. Progeria is a rare disease that makes one to grow twice of a normal body. But fortunately today I have not so many words to say, but I will firstly say it is an honor to be nominated on this great event. When I first got the invitation, I thought that without all the people who came in my life, I wouldn't be here and who I am today. Firstly, I would like to thank God for giving us the wisdom of understanding and loving each other. It is just an honor to be here. I am really blessed. I'm out of words. I was so nervous as I posted on Instagram. Like, I don't know what to say. But he's a lovely person and it's easy to communicate with and he's down to earth. And may God bless him and give him more years to come.
Thank you very much. We cannot make you taste it once you are here.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Toronto. Happy birthday to you.
I am really honored to be here today. I'm honored to meet the president. And we had a lovely talk, chat, a private one. And, and I am really happy about all the things that we discussed. And I hope they all come true. And I'm really honored that he bought me a cake for my birthday.
You ready? Onhlametse, how are you today?
Fine, thank you.
I am very well. I've seen you on TV on a number of times. And people seem to love you. Why do you think people love you so much?
Because a lot of them say I inspire them a lot, and which also give me encourage to inspire them more.
Even more. So people come to you and they tell you that you inspire them. You inspire me too.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's something about you, Ontlametse, that makes me think that you are positive about it. What makes you so positive about life, ma?
You know, everything in life has purpose, and all you have to do is accept and always pray.
And always pray. So you pray every night?
Every night, every morning.
Tell me about your new school.
Well, my new school, it's nice. Big challenge, big step. But school is school, education is education. All you have to do is work hard to get your results good, because everyone is focusing on my results, how I am participating at school.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And tell me, what are your future dreams, ma?
Well, my future dreams is to become a psychologist. If it can, I can also be an actor, because I can act also.
I've seen you on TV in those stage plays.
Yeah.
What was that stage play all about?
Well, it was house plays at school. We have houses, 3 houses, so we were competing.
Okay.
Fortunately, we got first place.
Oh.
And then the other team got second, and then I won third.
But don't you think that you got first place because the first lady, you know,
No,
that magic of the first
You know, when
lady?
you work hard,
Yeah.
you have to get what you want, even though you lose, but you know that I did work hard. Yeah. Because after house plays, I got sick a little bit. I was exhausted.
Yes.
So that's how I feel that I worked hard, which is good.
But Ontlametse, do you ever think about how blessed you are? How old are you, ma?
13.
You're 13. But do you know that you speak like an old person that knows exactly what life is all about? Do you think life has taught you so much so early?
Yeah. I think I got so many challenges facing
Yes, ma.
when I was still young.
When you were still young. And it has made you love life even more. And how do you feel that you're in KwaZulu Natal and we're honoring you as a tribute?
Well, it's nice. When I first got the invitation, I thought that without all the people telling me in my life, I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be who I am. Without all the challenges I faced. So it is a good experience.
It's a good experience. And you feel that you are here because of other people?
The love that they show, and to show that they understand what's going on. Even though they see someone coming, they'll say, this person is same as Ontlametse. What if it's Bulgaria? Then we can help that person.
Ontlametse, thank you very much, ma. And I wish you all the best. But more than anything, thank you for coming to KwaZulu Natal and making us feel so special.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to you.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to me too.
For we know that when this earthly tent we live in is taken down, when we die and leave these bodies, we will have a home in heaven, an eternal body made for us by God himself and not by human hands. We grow weary in our present bodies, and we long for the day when we will put on our heavenly bodies like new clothing. For we will not be spirits without bodies, but we will put on new heavenly bodies. Our dying bodies make us groan and sigh, but it's not that we want to die and have no bodies at all. We want to slip into our new bodies so that these dying bodies will be swallowed up by everlasting life. God himself has prepared us for this, and as a guarantee, he has given us his Holy Spirit. So we are always confident, even though we know that as long as we live in these bodies, we are not at home with the Lord. That is why we live by believing and not by seeing. Yes, we are fully confident, and we would rather be away from these bodies, but then we will be at home with the Lord. So our aim is to please him always, whether we are here in this body or away from this body. For we must all stand before Christ to be judged. We will each receive whatever we deserve for the good or evil we have done in our bodies. He died for everyone so that those who receive his new life will no longer live to please themselves. Instead, they will live to please Christ, who died and was raised for them. So we have stopped evaluating others by what the world thinks about them. Once I mistakenly thought of Christ that way, as though he were merely a human being. How differently I think about him now. What this means is that those who become Christians become new persons. They are not the same anymore, for the old life is gone, a new life has begun. All this newness of life is from God, who brought us back to himself through what Christ did. And God has given us the task of reconciling people to him. For God was in Christ, reconciling the world to himself, no longer counting people's sins against them. This is the wonderful message he has given us to tell others. We are Christ's ambassadors, and God is using us to speak to you. We urge you, as though Christ himself were here pleading with you, be reconciled to God. For God made Christ, who never sinned, to be the offering for our sin, so that we could be made right with God through Christ.
Aubrey Graham once said that everybody dies, but not everybody lives. And live is exactly what my friend did. So, you were the only reason I would come to visit my late great-grandmother's house, the light blue house next door. I would visit because I knew that fun was guaranteed. After all, fun was your middle name. You always wanted to be on the road, to go somewhere, because you knew you were destined for greatness, and there was no room in your life for mediocrity. We were basically born together, and to me, you were never normal. However, it had nothing to do with your condition. You were never normal in terms of your personality. I mean, how could one person be so selfless, so caring, and so beautiful, both externally and internally? Baholo, Untlamitz was the epitome of the beautiful Tswana saying, "E'ering, motho ke motho ka batho." And because she was, we are. You never ever put yourself first, and you would always let me have the last chip on the plate without hesitation. I wish I could have one more hour with you. So thank you for being honest with me, for your everlasting positivity, and for loving me the way that you did. However, that would be selfish of me, because you came to earth and you did what you needed to do, and God's timing is never ours. To my best friend, my sister from next door, my fence buddy, you were not just the star to me, you were the entire constellation.
I just saw a bubbly girl, fell in love with her. She was such a unique person that she actually had wisdom that other children of her age maybe didn't have.
A part of me felt a little bit sorry for her, but a part of me was like, wow, this person is amazing.
The school was a buzz with excitement because everyone knew that Untla was going to be starting.
We saw Untla as a young girl who had a mission to change the world.
Untla, she just captured our hearts. As a family, my heart as a person, and my kids as well.
My heart was won by her. Like I didn't want to leave her.
When you meet a beautiful soul, you know one, and usually if you are honest with yourself, you'd like to find them.
Untla's existence on this planet will forever teach many people about the fact that there's nothing impossible.
She believed that people did not understand the power that they had.
She had these extraordinary powers. I think I learned more from her probably than she learned from me.
We've got a young Reabetswe who, through Untla's inspiration, started doing outreach on her own, taking her own money, helping other children.
She said to me, we need to talk, but not on the phone, not over the phone. It's something serious but not exciting.
Her dreams scared me, and you know, sometimes I would reflect and wonder whether she's aware that her life is limited.
She would say, majority of you are living as if you're going to live forever.
Have you even have seen a person like me? I describe a first lady because I'm the first black child with this disease. So that's why I'm calling myself a first lady. I want to be a psychologist when I grow up because I want people to know that I accept who I am so that they can accept who they are and so that they can see with me.
Wow.
So what are your thoughts?
I need a box of tissues.
I tell you, this is the most extraordinary child I've ever seen. I mean, seriously, the maturity that she demonstrated is I mean, I can't believe her age. At 13, she had the maturity of a 90-year-old.
The words that came to my precious soul is so precious.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I can't say that I've ever seen anything like this before.
No.
I've never seen wisdom like that coming out of somebody of that age.
So the maturity of their mind is also.
No, that's the thing. That's the thing people ask, is it, well, that's because she had this disease that accelerates. No, it doesn't work like that. No. It doesn't speed up neuronal maturation. The opposite, in fact. The opposite. This girl, I mean, if you take a look, normally, you know, when you see somebody like Johnny Erickson, for example, you know, she was paralyzed from the neck down, and she, you know, was the first person I was aware of that would thank God for something terrible like that. And God used her in spite of that handicap. But she had some things going for her. She had a quick mind. She was a very good communicator, and she was attractive. With this kid, had nothing. And everything that you love about her is supernatural. That's what makes her special, is that everything, I mean, when she talks, God, she reflects God so strongly that in spite of all of this ugliness, you see beauty. I mean, you literally see beauty. If you saw her in the middle of the night, she'd scare you to death. I thought it was a voodoo doll. When I first saw a picture of her, I thought it was a voodoo doll. I thought it was something from a horror movie, you know? But when she talks, all you see is beauty.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It truly is an amazing case. It really is. And what makes, and you know, and she talks about her message was one of acceptance. What that means is that she accepted her situation, not just as an accident of nature, no, but this is something she said, you know, I mean, God made me this way for a good reason. She didn't know what it was, but she was determined to do the best she could so that maybe she could live out her purpose. And she did. She basically reflected Christ. She reflected God so well that non-Christians were appalled. I mean, she was the most famous girl in all of South Africa. I'd never heard of her until a couple days ago. But I have to say, it really captured my attention. You know, and it kind of, the message of her life is that no matter what disappointment or trouble we face, joy is right. If we do it God's way, we can experience joy no matter what. But part of that experience is accepting the situation, not as some terrible thing, not as some horrible misfortune, but look, even the bad stuff, God allowed it. And somehow, you know, if I do things his way, he will cause all things to work together for good. So you thank him, even if you don't know what that good is, and then watch God work. And her life is an example of what God does when you accept and thank him for things. So, I mean, it's just, what a beautiful example. I've never seen anything like it. You know, I'll never forget her, that's for sure. And neither will thousands of other people. I mean, I don't know what the number is on the people that she influenced, but had she been born normal, she would not have had a fraction of that. And the thing is she recognized, she's 13 years old. And what did she attribute her success to? Two things: the love of the people in her family, and also the bad experiences that she went. She said, I wouldn't be who I am without those challenges. You know, she recognized that God used the challenges to mold her character. That's astounding. From a 13-year-old. Never seen anything like that before. Okay. Now, getting back to the topic at hand, you know, we're talking about, you know, why do people walk away? Why do people start out, you know, living the Christian life or seemingly being Christian and then saying, I'm packing it in? And we mentioned expectation. if we expect to have an easy, attractive, fun life, Christianity's not going to work out too well, okay? Because while there's many good things and God takes care of us, he gives us more than we deserve, it's not all fun and games, okay? And we talk about the Jesus versus genie analogy. Jesus, when we accept Christ, when we walk into this Christian world, when we have, okay, I'm going to accept Christ into my heart, what do we expect from God at that point? Do we expect Jesus, who wants to be Lord of our lives, and we work for him? Or do we expect genie, whereas the kind of an idol, where God will now we've done our part, we went to church and paid our dues, now we expect God to do things that we want. Now, the two lists are different. We got the right column and the left column. You know, if we accept Jesus, then the deal is we serve God. Fairness is not from our perspective, because while God, I believe, is fair, it's fairness from his perspective. And from my perspective, it's not going to look fair, and I shouldn't expect that. God uses pain, shame, and loss to mold our character. And that's one of the reasons why Aunt Metzi had such amazing character, is that pain, shame, and loss. She internalized it, thank God for it, made the most of it, and ended up with a character that outshines just about everybody, okay? God blesses us with enough riches to provide for our needs and to bless others. He may or may not provide us with an attractive, loving, compassionate, supportive spouse who will honor the marriage vows till death do us part. They may or may not be healthy and live a full life. Those are not guarantees. It may or may not happen. God will certainly maintain his control over my life and destiny, and I will not have control. God may or may not give us a happy family. Joy is one-on-one. So joy is available to us, but he's not going to control the people in our world. Now, a genie, God serves us. God ensures that we'll be treated fairly and we'll understand fair. God protects us from pain, shame, and loss. Genie looks out for my reputation, assuring that I'm loved by everybody. Genie gives us all the riches we want and protects us from debt and financial lack and loss. Genie will help me take control over my life. Genie will, of course, provide me with an attractive spouse that we want, and for certain they will be forever supportive, healthy physically and psychologically. They will, of course, honor their marriage vows and live as long as we do. Genie will ensure that we have happy, healthy, well-adjusted children that are smarter and more adept than the neighbor's children, okay? Now, these may not be verbalized. These may not be verbalized, and they're often not verbalized. But how do I know that people are expecting genie? By anger. When they get angry at God because these things aren't happening in the left column, that tells you they expected it. They never said it. They never sat down and looked at the contract. But when they blow up and get angry and bitter at God because they're not getting the left-hand column, that tells you that they expected genie.
For the kingdom of heaven is like a man traveling to a far country, who called his own servants and delivered his goods to them. And to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his own ability, and immediately he went on a journey. Then he who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them, and made another 5 talents. And likewise, he who had received 2 gained 2 more also. But he who had received 1 went and dug in the ground and hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants came and settled accounts with them. So he who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, Lord, you delivered to me 5 talents. Look, I have gained 5 more talents besides them. His Lord said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. He also, who had received 2 talents, came and said, Lord, you delivered to me 2 talents. Look, I have gained 2 more talents besides them. His Lord said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Then he who had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And I was afraid, and went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours.
So in terms of, you can't really discuss the concept of fairness and expectation without referring to this passage. This is a really important thing. This is God himself telling us about fairness. Now, he had these 3 servants. To one, he gave 10 talents, the other 5, and the other guy got 1. All right. And, and so basically the story is the guy that got 1, he felt slighted. He felt that the master was unfair. Now, it says that he gave them according to their ability. And so the master didn't just randomly give this. He assessed them and said, okay, you get 10, you get 5, you get 1. Okay. And he thought the master thought that was fair. Well, the servant didn't think it was fair. He called him a hard man. You're unfair. You want us to do the work. You give us the money, expect us to do the work, and then you want your money back. Not fair, not fair. Okay. And so he decided, I'm not working for you because you're not fair. I only got 1. Now, the thing is, the master, his response, you guys probably remember this story, is his response. He did not defend himself. He did not say that you're wrong. I am fair. Okay. Now, first of all, how much money is a talent? Some translations say you gave 1, 10,000, 5,000, and 1,000. Okay. A talent is 33 kilograms of gold. By today's money, that 1 talent is worth about $2 million. Okay. So Jesus was talking in terms of not drachma, okay, not farthings. He said talents. And so Jesus was making it clear that the master didn't give them a little bit of money. He gave the guy $2 million. And he's upset because somebody else got 10 million. All right. In fact, the first guy got 20 million and the other guy got 10 million. He only got a measly $2 million and he's upset. Not fair. I only got 2 million. Okay. And so in telling this story, Jesus is making it very clear that no, look, yes, it was $2 million. All right. So you can call it unfair by comparing yourself to other people. And see, that's very human. We forget what God has given. When we see somebody that has more, if you have a house that's worth, $3 million, but you live in a neighborhood where the other houses are $10 million, you feel like a loser. But the reality is you got a house that's worth $3 million. Okay. You're not appreciating it because you're too busy rubbernecking, looking at the neighbors and comparing yourself. The Bible tells us over and over, do not compare yourself with other people. That's part of envy and jealousy and all that crap. And there's a reason why it's in the 10 Commandments. Don't do that. You're robbing yourself of happiness and you're making God angry because you're not appreciating what you've got. So this guy got $2 million and he's calling the master unfair because he gave him $2 million and not 20 million like the first guy. Okay. Now the master does not, as I mentioned, claim to be fair.
Let me get this straight. You are calling me hard, as in unfair? Really? I invented the word fair. I am always fair. How dare you make such an accusation against me, the Almighty? I distribute blessings and curses completely fairly. There is nothing unfair about the way I treat humanity.
Okay. Now, the master could have did that. The master could have fought, and Jesus could have made it clear. No, he was really fair. But he doesn't. Instead, he goes on and says this.
But his Lord answered and said to him, You wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I have not scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received back my own with interest. So take the talent from him, and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
All right, so what do you make of that? Any comments?
I would say it, be diligent, be purposeful. Don't be lazy. Do something with your life. Be productive. Have something to show for it. God's given you life span of life, some more than others, some more talents than others, but he wants us to use what we have.
There, yeah, absolutely. He says, he also says, earlier on, he makes the comment that, from him who has, more is expected. So the guy that got the 10 talents, you get the guy that got $20 million, God expects, he's going to judge him more harshly. It's like, look, if you've been given extra blessings, it is fair. In God's economy, it is fair. If you have very little, then he's not going to hold you accountable for so much. I mean, if you take that little you have and make something out of it, then you're going to have more later. Eternity is way longer than here. Okay. And so in God's economy, it is fair, but to us, it's not. And so what we have here is God saying, look, so what you don't think it's fair? You're responsible. It's between me and you. Don't compare yourself with those other people. Okay. And if you expect fair, you're in the wrong lane. Okay. It will not seem fair to you if you're busy comparing yourself with other people. What you need to be what you need to be thinking about is, what did you do with what I gave you? That's what you need to focus on.
But what he gives you comes back tenfold.
Yes.
So you have to use it, and it's the law of abundance. What you give out comes back, and it's multiplied. God multiplies it.
Exactly. In this life and the life to come. With Anta Metzi, she was given a lot of lemons, and she made the most fantastic lemonade with it. Okay. And that's the thing, is that, here's the thing. It's one thing to be given obvious blessings and making something of that. But in this case, she took a curse and turned it into a blessing by her trust in God. I mean, that's what makes her one of the most extraordinary young people I've ever seen. I mean, it's a lot of people can take, the little blessings that God gave you and multiply those, but to take a curse and have that be a bonus, okay, wow, okay, now that's superpower. She did have powers, and those powers were from God. That's the thing, is that, God is demonstrated by her attitude in life. So non-acceptance, there's a huge divide between what I deserve and what I've got. Not fair, I deserve more. I don't deserve this, and God is not doing a good job because I deserve more. That's what it means to non-accept. Okay. And the people in Sardis that are walking away from God, very, very often, and people who turn cold, it's because of that. It's not fair. I deserve better. I deserve more. God's not doing his part. So I'm not really that excited about reading the Bible and going to church, giving to charity, and forgiving my enemies. Okay.
Did you want a 9:30 warning, Bill?
Yeah, actually, this is my last slide. So yeah, thank you. I just saw that. Yeah. Now, acceptance is, there's a huge divide between what I deserve and what I've got. Same thing, exact same sentence. But with this, the attitude is, you know what? I look at the blessings that I do have. Look at what I do have going for me. Focus on those. Realize I don't deserve this. I deserve less. And that's the thing, is the reality is don't forget, we are sinners. We are still sinners. Okay, we're still sinners. And we don't deserve the blessings that God gave us. And that is the other part of acceptance, okay? So acceptance is so important when it comes to being successful as a Christian, to stand in the race, to not be like the people of Sardis who let it grow cold. That attitude of acceptance, of thanking God for everything, not just the good stuff, even the bad stuff. For Romans 8:28, for God causes all things to work together for good to those that love God and are called according to his purpose. That means that no matter how horrible things are, one of the worst things that happened to me physically was catching on fire. I had a huge percentage of my body got third-degree burns. Even now, it still causes lots of problems because the eczema in those areas drives me nuts sometimes. Okay, but the thing is that going through that, I was able to help a lot of people who've gone through physical suffering and burns and so forth. I was able to help them more because of what I went through than my degrees. Okay, all of it, the good and the bad. God can use everything about your life. Every piece of suffering and blessing comes together to make you unique and special. And that when we thank God for the bad stuff, we are appreciating that God is sovereign. He knows about it all. He's over it all. It's okay. And even this bad stuff, God can use for good. And that's how we keep from being Sardis. Okay? Any comments? Any other comments on this stuff?
Well, Bill,
Yeah.
What I was thinking about with the talents,
yeah,
it was related to Sardis. There's a word that Jesus says at the end of all the church letters, that if you overcome.
Yeah.
And it always bothered me, says, because I'm like, well, we mess up, we confess, we ask for forgiveness. But he says, no, you must overcome. And I realized years later that that was because we weren't relying on him.
Yeah.
When you rely on him, there's no reason to fail. Not in every little thing.
No, very good point.
But in general,
yeah,
this talents, they're like not just a better person. They're for, I think, winning souls and other, not like the count of winning souls, but as you help a neighbor, as you know, that they might be saved, as you witness and do all things that might have you think good about God, and you know, that type of idea is a talent, I think, instead of just you know, bearing it and you know, you're around your house, you know, praying, but no one knows about it. No one, you're not helping, you're not calling people, you're, oh, what do I know? What am I gonna do? Well, you rely on Jesus and he will make it succeed.
Yeah, that's it. It's that simple. I mean, Anta Metzi was not a Bible scholar. She wasn't a theologian. She wasn't an evangelist. All she did was have an unshakable faith in God. She talked to him on a regular basis. She thanked him for what she had. And the challenges before her, I want to do good in school. I want to act in a play. I want to meet the president, you know? I mean, she set goals and then she worked hard to achieve those goals. And, you know, and she trusted that God would help her achieve those things. And God did. He blessed her. She overcame the challenge, but with God's help, you know, as opposed to somebody who becomes bitter because they don't have enough, they don't have what they feel they deserve, and they say, well, you know what, why, I'm not doing any work for God. I'm not going to church and Bible study. I'm not going to, you know, all this kind of stuff. I'm going to sit down and watch TV and basically, you know, just spend my life pleasuring myself, doing what I want to do. And you know, I got my fire insurance. The Bible's over on the shelf. I go to church enough. I do enough. And there's the Christian stuff, and then there's normal fun stuff. And that's how they live their life. That's not overcoming. Overcoming is bringing God into it all. Okay, it's not being perfect, but it is you know, engaging with God. You know, he tells us what he wants, putting forth effort, staying, you know, keep on reading that Bible, keep on studying, keep on doing fellowship, keep on giving, keep on forgiving. All right, and you know that Philippians 4:6-7, in all things by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, letting my requests be made known to God. You know, constantly being involved, confessing my sins as I go along. That's how you stay alive, and that's how you overcome. When you give up and stop doing those things, that's when you get in trouble.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a question and I also have a comment.
Yeah.
My question, for one, you know, I have anxiety disorder, but doesn't sound like anxiety like you're describing in here. Because I definitely have joy and I definitely am relying on the Lord, and it doesn't consume me like you were describing, but I just was curious, is the anxiety that I'm affected with, is it doing the same type of thing to me?
For every moment that we spend focused on an anxious thought, you're unfortunately, interleukin 6 goes up immediately, and interleukin 6 does have adverse health effects. So this isn't like after a day, it's immediate. And now the thing is, joy and thankfulness have the opposite effect. It also is rapid. Okay.
Yeah.
The more time we spend in negative emotion, it's like we're sipping strychnine the entire time. So the longer it lasts, you're taking another sip and another sip and another sip and another sip. So it's what percentage of our time do we spend in a depressed or anxious state? That does, for that length of time, it is toxic for that length of time. Okay?
And on the flip side, I recognize a lot of myself in what we saw in that young girl, because, you know, with my bipolar disorder, I'm constantly helping other people and teaching about bipolar. When we weren't locked down, I carry cards to hand out about bipolar disorder. And I was handing them out 2-3 times a week, getting people treatment, getting people care. And they listened to my story. They listened to what I lived with. And, you know, I know that that's part of my purpose. You've seen some of the articles that I've written. You've seen some of the programs I've been a part of. And I know that that's in big part what I've been put here for. And that most people with bipolar see it as a curse. I don't see it as a curse.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good point. And you know, with the thing is that whatever we have, there is a silver lining. I mean, and it's hard to believe that, because I mean, but that is the reality. In every situation, you do it God's way, and it might not be evident immediately, but down the road, eventually, you follow Him, and there will be a silver lining. And the closer we walk with Him, the more we're going to see that. You know?
Yeah.
Good point. All right. Does somebody else out there? There's another one.
I don't know if anyone else is about to say something, because I can only see certain parts of the screen.
You can go ahead though.
Oh, I didn't want to say. I just know in my lifetime, I've just really worked hard to stay away from self-pity, that whining type of kind of a. That is such a consuming.
No, it can't be.
Thing, you know, and it taints everything. And I'll tell you, I thank God that it has never gotten a grip, you know, because I think it just takes you down a dark tunnel and everything. And then learning so much that God is faithful and never, ever, ever not hold up His end of the bargain.